Today, we are taking on Doomed Encampment with a very interesting build. So, the build in question has Technique 10, and it is a Desecrating Shot build. So, a very natural question to ask is, why would you do this? Right? And that's a question you should always ask yourself. Why would you do this? In this specific case, well, we might as well go back to... Oh, we'll have a little history lesson. Divine Justice used to scale off the damage that the actual damage that was dealt by the weapon. So melee and projectile damage, they would work on it. Right. And when they reworked Divine Justice, what they effectively did was they said you will not have any more split scaling. Instead, you will only scale off magic damage and the weapon that you're using. So this means that certain things didn't really work anymore, and consider that additive rework had happened recently. So when you consider R3's unique mechanics, one of them which doesn't really come to mind immediately, but it takes a little bit of thinking, is the damage situationals. There are technically damage situationals outside of R3, which are like Regicide, Abyssal, but R3 was the one to introduce Technique. And Technique steals both projectile and magic damage. And to my knowledge, there is only one remaining ability in the game which scales off two kinds of damage and does so multiplicatively, as in it takes the output of one damage type and then multiplies it again by the other damage type, and that is Desecrating Shot, because Desecrating Shot performs a second separate magic AoE attack after your initial projectile attack. And so on. So this means, and when you have one enchantment, right, the way Technique is budgeted is that it's like, oh yeah, it could be 40% magic if you use it correctly. Or well, I guess 10% or 7.5% projectile if you chose to use it properly. Most people can't really consistently hit that, which is why you can have a piece with Technique 4, even though it would be completely ludicrous to have a piece with 40% magic damage. Or well, no, it's not completely ludicrous because Wolf's Blood Tome exists and it just gets to dominate the agility magic meta, but agility chest plates do not stack up to Stargazers in terms of the raw damage that they can output at close range. But even then, it's not budgeted as highly. However, what you have here is a way to get both the projectile and the magic buffs, and a way to make them stack. So, because being in Technique range is able to buff your damage by a monstrous simply ludicrous amount, and then do it again on in a way that multiplies with the previous one, you can get very, very good damage if you can maintain Technique range. Now, I am playing a little sloppily because I haven't played this build in ages, and also the FPS from my recording software, it is causing a significant drop. I'm getting like 20 or so, which makes it very hard to aim and very hard to see attacks. But when you fully charge up, and when you fully charge up your totemic projection U, right, which is another insanely powerful ability, which normally sees no use, because why would a shaman want like raw attack or projectile damage? You realize it gets pretty damn good because that allows it to get, because that damage, yeah, that buffs desecrating shot as well. It buffs the AoE as well as the buffing the main projectile shot. So what you end up with is, if you manage to get into technique range, a way to deal 260 damage in an AoE to any mob that's within both the desecrating shots range and the range of your technique. And as you can see, that can one-shot elites. If used correctly. It is a little bit difficult for me to use this correctly because of how laggy my game is, but I mean, you can see how powerful it is straight up. And being able to do this isn't even like, oh man, Alchemist has to wait 6 seconds. You can do this every 1.25 seconds as long as you reload your crossbow correctly. It's kind of insane. This is because of the pieces we picked and the charms we chose. Final Herald's Lifeblood is the core of the build, of course, of the charm setup. And then you can slap on a Swift Bursting, as well as one single level of Aptitude, which you get from Protomartyr Remains. And then you can do that on a 1.25 second cooldown. Of course, there are issues with the build. Issues such as the fact that you have to be in kissing range of a mob in order to deal damage. So you will pretty inevitably be trading hits. The good thing about choosing Kisarith for this is that it has a base of 1 projectile speed, so the bug where things phase directly through where arrows phase directly through at a point blank range isn't so painful. But it's still pretty difficult. It also does struggle with Carapace if you don't throw your totem into the correct position. Of course, one must remain flexible. You don't always need to be in point blank range if you're okay with, you know, taking a little longer to kill an enemy just to be safe. Because when you do walk into the killing range, you better hope you have your shot up to 1 shot. And if for whatever reason you can't, for example, if your game is going at 20 FPS and you literally can't turn fast enough to shoot and kill the mob, then you just kind of get cooked. There are other options for desecrating shot stacking. The one that comes to mind immediately is actually Abyssal in fishing combats. Of course, why you would ever need to stack Abyssal for a fishing combat is questionable, especially given how long they last. But it is possible mainly because of the existence of a Storm Surge coral. I believe that this build could genuinely be very, very good, and the fact that I'm dying is not a build issue but rather a skill issue. Pretty much because of how difficult it is to kill mobs when you are playing at the kind of FPS that you can see in this video. But even though it's like a build that is very good and it's a build I have in my armory, I don't really play this much because it's genuinely kind of frustrating to have to aim a shot at point blank range and manage to not get murked by the billion other things that could kill you when you're in technique range. So this is actually my first time playing the build in a very, very long time. It's also a lot more awkward feeling than something like a Luminous Infusion melee build would be, because meleeing a mob feels a lot easier than having to projectile hit it. Trying to keep track of everything that's going on is tough. Surprisingly, for the region with like fishing in it, the ring has no water content of its own. Fun fact. So there's no actual environment to be using Abyssal in, except for something like... Ah, damn. Except for something like fishing combats, and fishing combats are not really something I could even record. They're simply too short for that. Or you could go into Exalted Magenta's water, or you could go into Exalted Light Blue's water. Although I would hardly count Exalted Light Blue as a water section. That's really more of like a river. Very different things. What is that? That's the sound of a... If I could aim and kill that thing, I would have won that encounter if I had shot it. Unfortunately, I did not shoot it, and therefore I lost. It's very different from a usual projectile build, because if you miss a shot on a normal projectile build, you can kind of recover and shoot it again before it gets you. But in this case, you're already in melee range. You either kill it or it kills you. Or for fodder, you can choose to just leave it to your totems to deal with. Especially if the mob is at extremely low health. Oh jeez. This is the only way, as far as I'm aware, to get this kind of usage out of a situational. I think I die here because it's not counting any of my dshot hits. The nice thing about dshot is that if you miss somehow at point blank range when the mobs are swarming you, which managed to happen there, I don't know where the arrow went, but it definitely didn't go into a mob. You get another chance because it doesn't expend itself until you actually hit the mob. Yeah, this is. Now, I'm not certain how well this build functions against a Twisted, but I assume it would be a cycle of running up to the Twisted, performing a shot, and then running away from it. Almost in the style of a rogue. If a... I think I die here to the Wither. Yes, I do. Okay, you thunderstep that way. I'm just gonna run past and grab the grave. Very good. This might be one of those cases where you just leave the totems to kind of do their own thing, except it's elected to immediately walk out of the range of the totems, which I didn't know it could do. Okay, I think at this point, yes, we just let the totems kill it. It's an extremely messy recording. I think I'm not going to upload. I will have to fix the FPS issue because this is not only horrible to watch, it's horrible to play, and when it's horrible to play, I'm washed. I will, however, be finishing the run so I can check the noise suppression. I do hope that it hasn't eaten all my audio, although I guess if it did, I don't really